Yes, and joining us from the Ugandan capital, Kampala, is Mildred Tuhaise, a senior reporter with NBS Television, a Ugandan independent television station. Good evening, Ms. Tuhaise.
Good evening, Saka.
How are you?
I'm well, fine, thanks. How are you?
I am terrific. Talk to us about the mood in Kampala.
Well, the mood, Saka, right now, I can authoritatively say, is much calmer than the mood that was in Kampala the days when Honorable Kyagulanyi and the 33 others were still detained, and the days when we were still waiting up to hear what would be coming in from the court. But the court martial, which earlier on we had charges, Honorable Bobi Wine and charges of illegal possession of ammunition, and then later on when the court did drop his charges to when he was taken to the civilian court, magistrate confirmation, of course, the case is still on and pending. The case that was filed in the Gulu High Court, and on Monday this very week, 7 days later, and the 33 others were released on a non-cash bail of 5 million, and for their sureties, 10 million non-cash bail.
Talk to us about Monday, Mildred. What was the reaction like when they heard, for example, that Bobi Wine had actually been released on bail?
Well, I think starting off from Gulu, the live pictures that were coming in with our reporters on ground, it was a jovial mode. It was celebration mode, not only in Gulu actually, but also in Arua, because the MP-elect, who is Kassiano Wadri, who fortunately was sworn in today at the Speaker's chambers by the Clerk to Parliament, had never, because he did win the election under incarceration, and he was in Gulu, that's where he was detained, and won the election in Arua. So there was celebration of a deep temporary freedom, although he pronounced that he's been banished for 3 months from, heading anywhere near Arua. It was a celebration right there, and if he has to go there, he has to seek court permission. Coming back to Gulu, there were fans of Bobi Wine, or he suddenly legislator that commonly known as Bobi Wine. It was celebratory mode, and there were lots of people chanting "People Power, Our Power." This is the slogan, of course, of the People Power kind of group. And then back in Kampala, I particularly personally witnessed celebrations in the ghettos here, and particularly in an area called Kamocha. There were celebrations thrown. There were stickers, the flyers of Bobi Wine, and they were celebrating. It was actually a trans-night sort of a party for the people here who were celebrating the temporary freedom of 7 days legislature and the other 33, of course.
Now, Mildred, you mentioned that Kassian Wadri has actually been sworn in as a member of parliament representing Arua, and yet he is not allowed to step foot in Arua. Is there some sort of or some kind of martial law in Arua?
Well, when appearing before the Gulu High, of course, prosecution raised the concern that probably the he would be involved in illegal possessions, or there would be a little bit of chaos because people haven't seen him from the time that he was elected into that particular position. So because of the concerns that was raised by prosecution, they asked that he, and then the presiding judge actually asked up until when, because also defense lawyers were concerned how much time, because it seems to be an ambiguous time. And then the presiding judge did indicate that it would only be 3 months. But also cited that in case it was urgent, that he definitely needs to go to Arua, then he would have to seek court permission and see how security can help him access the area. Because also the defense lawyers did cite out that if in case it is an issue or an issue of gatherings that is catered for under the Public Order Management Act of Uganda. So that needed not to be an issue to prevent him from going there. But court remains firm that he is given 3 months. But just in case he needs to seek permission.
As we talk, Mildred, where is Bobby Wine and his colleagues? We gather, of course, that they are expected to report to the courts in Arua on Thursday.
Yes, exactly. They're expected to report to the court, but currently, Honorable Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, also known as Bobby Wine, is receiving treatment under Rubaga Hospital because it was very urgent that he needed medical attention, because even in the courtroom, he looked very frail. He could not sleep for a very long time. Actually, in the courtroom, there are the accused, two accused persons who collapsed due to, their health status right there. So he's receiving treatment in Rubaga Hospital. And for members of parliament like Kassiano Wadri, who didn't receive really very grave injuries, he was wanting to get like a and he's at his home. We actually spoke to him today morning on the morning show, Morning Breeze, and he seemed to be very, very jovial and in a very happy mood. Same as other members of parliament, because other members of parliament like Gerald Karang and Tungamo municipality representative is as well fine. He's at his home. Kassiano Wadri, like I said earlier, Paul Moiro as well, Ginger Eatley had a little bit of issues with his hand, but he's well. They're all in their homes, aside from Honorable Kyagulanyi, who is still taking medication, and the other accused who are still taking medication in their other areas.
Well, on that note, Amot, Mildred Tuhaise, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us.
You're welcome, Saka. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Let me come to you, Daniel Kauma.
Yes, sir.
What about from your vantage point? You belong to the Ugandan diaspora.
Yes.
How do the developments in Uganda really look like to you?
From our perspective as Ugandans in the diaspora, first of all, I want to slide back a little bit to see why we have Bobby Wine as an individual. I think it's very important not to ignore the demographic changes that are happening in our country, and even not only back home, but also in the diaspora. Mm-hmm. Uganda at the moment, 55% of our population is under the age of 18. 70% of our population is under the age of 30. So we have a large young population of youth who are on the streets. Mm-hmm. The level of education is not sufficient. They are not well trained, not well equipped to be in the labor force at the moment. So they are languishing in Kamocha, in Kasangati, in Natete, on the streets of Kampala. Mm. So these young people are looking for an answer. They are looking for a solution. So at the moment, in any country, such a young population will be an asset. When you have a large segment of the population entering the labor force, that's typically an asset in any country because you have a large tax-paying base. Most of the countries in Europe are struggling with a larger, older segment of the population. So for us, Uganda, we have a large population of youth. But the problem is that the youth are unemployed.
Unemployed.
What would have been an asset is becoming a liability for the country. And those are the people who are looking to the government for answers. And the only person offering them answers and hope at the moment is not our incumbent government, which has been in power for 30 years. They look at a 74-year-old president, Mr. Museveni.
32 perhaps, about 32?
Yeah, exactly. And then they look at Mr. Kyagulanyi Bobby Wine, who is 36, who is our age. He relates more to them. He understands their struggles. He walks on the same streets. He goes to the little stores and little supermarkets where they shop, where they sell their goods. So Kyagulanyi to them exemplifies what they are going through, what their experiences are. So as Ugandans in the diaspora, most of us who come here are also coming out of that environment, looking for opportunities. So there's a connection between what's happening in Uganda and the people who end up flocking to the embassy to get visas to come to the diaspora. It's because we are looking for opportunity. So the same answers those who can't get visas are looking to Kyagulanyi to offer the answers, and leaders like him, us, are trying to find an exit strategy. Where can we find greener pastures? So at the moment, the Minister of Foreign Affairs estimates there's 1.5 million Ugandans in the diaspora, 1.5 and growing. So that means that there is a desire for opportunity. Most Ugandans who live and come to the diaspora, they don't want to necessarily live here, But if those opportunities could be created in our country, we would rather be here. So when we see an individual like Kyagulanyi who offers hope to our country, going through the same treatment that we have seen opposition leaders like Kano Kizza Besigye experience, we have to stand up and say, no, we cannot allow our country to go through the same phase which we have seen happen before. So Kyagulanyi, the reason why you have Ugandans in Boston, Ugandans here in DC, Ugandans in London, Toronto, marching on the streets, it's not because we want to taint the image of our country, but it's because we don't want our country to damage our future leaders like Kyagulanyi and others. So that's why, as a diaspora, you saw us in DC here marching. You are seeing others in Boston speaking up because we think our country has gone through this before. We know our history clearly. We know where Uganda has been since independence. We have never had peaceful power change in our country between different presidents. It has always been violent, and we don't want to go back. So we want a future which is more democratic. We want a future of leaders who are inspiring young people like Kyagulanyi, not only through his deeds, but his music, which is a key part of who he is. He sings about the struggles of the average Ugandan on the streets, and they relate to that.
I see.
That's why they call him the ghetto president. He's the man who is fighting for the poor.
We'll come to you a little bit later. Let me come to you, Jeff. What about you from your vantage point? What do you read out of this? You know, Daniel rightly talks about the changing demographics, and probably he might also have added that these changing demographics in tandem with the social media could probably be a democratic game changer on the continent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to sort of broaden Daniel's point out a bit, if you look across the entire continent, I don't think what we're seeing happening in Uganda is by any means an isolated incident, right? If you look at the average age across sub-Saharan Africa, it's 19 years old. The average age of those in power is 62 years old. So there's a vast chasm between the up-and-coming youth generation and those leaders who've been in power, like a Museveni, who's been there for 32 years, or a Paul Biya in Cameroon, who's been in power since 1982. And there's no shortage of those. Uganda, I think it's particularly acute. The average age is 16 and a half years old. They've never known another leader besides Yoweri Museveni. And to your point about the use of social media, I think in this particular instance, as well as others, it's been truly remarkable and a real game changer. I think when you look at the outcry about Bobi Wine's unjust detention, the torture that he was the recipient of on behalf of the authorities, you saw a global outcry across social media, across traditional media. And if you look at a lot of the social media traffic, a lot of it was being generated across the Eastern Horn of Africa, much of it coming from Kenya. You saw the Africans Rising Collective, which is very active in West and Central Africa and Francophone Africa, really helping to elevate the cause. And not only Bobi Wine, but you started to see sort of other spin-off initiatives where free Diane Rwigara, who's currently detained for now 1 year as of today in Rwanda. So I think it's really galvanized a lot of people across the globe because, to Daniel's point, he speaks to a much broader audience than someone like a President Museveni can ever hope to speak to.
Jeff, I'm sorry that I had to interrupt because in this studio there's no democracy. When the producer general says go for the break, you have to go. So I hope you'll find some space in a beautiful American hat to forgive me for that.
Always.
Thank you very much. Now, Jeff, when you come to African culture, there is this thing called authority rather than reasoning. Authority meaning the older you are, the wiser you are. Right. The more highly placed you are, the more smarter you are, and all that kind of stuff. Are you seeing some fundamental changes of attitudes and mindsets among the ordinary, average African youth?
And from my perspective, I really think you are. I think if you look across the continent and a lot of the popular protests that are happening across the continent, they're being driven by youth, and they're being mobilized by online and social and digital media, which is why I think you're starting to see a counter trend of those in power trying to clamp down on social media. You see it happening in Uganda, for instance, with the social media tax. You see it happening in Zambia, of all places. And particularly around election times, it's becoming the norm now where governments shut down social media. So people cannot organize and they can't mobilize online or in the public square. But I think going back to the larger trend that we're seeing, particularly in Uganda, again, the current ordeal that we're seeing with what happened in Arua, it's not an isolated incident. Going back to 2012, I believe, when MP Sarana Nabanda was poisoned under mysterious circumstances. Daniel mentioned the continuing trials and tribulations of Kizza Besigye. In September of 2017, when you had Uganda's security forces raid the parliament and nearly beat to an inch of her life another member of parliament, Betty Nambuze, who I believe has been laid up in the hospital due to damage to her
Nambuze
spine.
from Mukono.
Exactly. So this sort of state-sponsored, politically motivated brutality has been happening for 32 years in Uganda. But I think, again, to Daniel's point and to the issues you brought up, the rising youth population, the solidarity that is being built across borders and across boundaries, across East Africa, across the continent.
Internationally.
Exactly. And the diaspora, people like Daniel. I think, and I feel very comfortable sitting here today and saying that if it wasn't for that global outcry and if it wasn't for people like Daniel and others in the diaspora and those in the country and the brave, courageous activists on the ground raising this to a global level, Bobby Wine would still be behind bars. There's no doubt in my mind. So I think we need to keep activating, we need to keep mobilizing, and we need to keep shining a light on dictators, because what happens in Uganda and elsewhere is, oftentimes abusive leaders are able to get away with what they do, overstepping their powers or instituting harshly repressive or retrograde laws, because no one's paying attention and no one's talking about it. And I think the more light we can shine on that, the better it is for everybody, the better it is for democratic rights, and the better it is for the future, not only of Uganda, but of the entire continent as well.
Very interesting. Daniel, what about supporters of Yoweri Museveni, who say that in Museveni, you're looking at a uniquely gifted leader, something perhaps akin to really, essentially something that is very rarely seen in society. We're talking about something akin to perhaps God's political gift to Uganda.
Right. But we have seen that before, not just in Uganda, where we have strong men who rule a country for decades. We saw that in Libya. We have seen that in Egypt.
You saw that in Zimbabwe, where I just came from.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are not saying that Museveni hasn't done any good for our country, but you have to create a culture of power change. We see it here in the United States. Once in a while, you'll get a George Bush, you'll get a Barack Obama, you'll get a Donald Trump, and I guarantee you after 8 years, there'll be somebody else, assuming that he doesn't win another term. So having talent doesn't mean that you stay in power for 30 years or 40 years, because the new ideas start running out. Because I saw our friends in Ethiopia a few months ago, when their new prime minister was in Washington, D.C., you see people flying in. Hundreds and thousands of Ethiopians were flying in because it's offering them hope. So you always need that new leader who is going to inspire you, who is going to come and just his presence inspire young people to come out.
Are you
and present new
reminded,
ideas.
for example, of younger Yoweri Museveni back in 1986?
Yeah. When Museveni came out in 1986 with his 10-point program, people were excited. People came out, they were laying mats on the streets so that the convoys drive through Kampala. We don't see that anymore.
Why is that so? Is it because perhaps there is now what some would call a trust deficit?
Absolutely.
Trust deficit.
Yeah. And throughout the year, we have seen, first of all, removing presidential term limits, and then recently they removed age limits. So even the ideas which Museveni spoke of in 1986 of leaders who overstay in power for a long time, he's now violating the same ideas and values which he was against in 1986. So that's why most of us used to support Museveni. I like the ideas, I like the energy, I read his book, Sowing the Mustard Seed. I believed in all the values he stood for in 1986. Most of us were very young. We grew up under Museveni. We liked some of the changes he made through the country. I lived in Mutundo with my grandmother. We didn't have any, they used to bring sugars to LC, like sacks of sugar. People used to come and line up just to get sugar and soap in the villages. So we didn't have services, we didn't have a good road network, we didn't have, so there's been changes that have happened in the country. But those changes do not imply that block out the young, youthful leaders. So we need the complete flow of ideas in our country, and that's why Museveni, in spite of the goods he has done, sort of the good things, we need to create a culture of power change.
Now, Jeff, there are some people who, again, talk about the trust deficit. They argue that when you look at the issue of trust and you associate it with Yoweri Museveni's account, that's probably not so many people believe in that, because they say, for example, in 2001,